The darkness enveloped the small town of Gandaya, Queensland, like a silent veil. The soft light of the moon cast long, mysterious shadows over the rural landscape, where the only source of light came from a modest, makeshift house in the middle of an isolated property. Inside, 22-year-old Amy Rylance lay on the living room sofa, her eyes fixed on the TV screen, but her mind distant, as if something were pulling her toward a place she couldn't identify. Beside her, a cup of tea cooled slowly. It was an ordinary night, like so many others, or so it seemed. Amy and her husband, Keith Rylance, were in Gandaya to pursue a dream, transforming the barren land into a vineyard they named Whispering Winds Winery. With them was Petra Heller, a close friend, who had become part of the family. The day had been exhausting, and by 9:30 p.m., Petra had already retired to her room, worn out, while Keith went to bed in the room next door. But Amy, restless, stayed up a little longer in the living room, accompanied only by the low hum of the television. The night deepened and an absolute silence fell over the house. Outside, the gentle rustling of trees whispered like a constant breeze. Amy's eyelids grew heavy with sleep, and she barely noticed when the TV program was interrupted by static. Her eyes closed, and sleep finally overtook her, pulling her into a semi-conscious state where reality and imagination blurred. At 11:15 p.m., Petra was abruptly awakened by a blinding light flooding her room, slicing through the darkness like a blade. She sat up, disoriented, unable to comprehend where the intense glow was coming from. Her heart raced with the feeling that something was dreadfully wrong. She cautiously opened her bedroom door and saw a sight that stole her breath. Amy was floating several feet above the ground, surrounded by an intense light emanating from a shattered window. Around her, small objects hovered in the air, defying gravity, as if space itself had lost its logic. Petra's instinct was to rush to Amy, but something halted her. The light felt like a presence that could not be challenged. She glanced toward the window and saw outside a massive disc-shaped object, silvery and silent, hovering over a tree near the house. Petra's heart raced with a mix of terror and fascination. Before she could react, the light around Amy began moving her slowly toward the object in the sky. Petra tried to scream, but the sound lodged in her throat. Then everything went dark. The floor seemed to give way beneath her, and she collapsed, swallowed by the void. When Petra regained consciousness, a chill ran down her spine. The silence was now suffocating. She struggled to her feet, trembling, and looked around. Amy was gone. The window was shattered, cold night air gusting in, and the floating objects now lay scattered on the floor. Her mind reeled, trying to make sense of what she'd witnessed. A scream tore from her lips, shattering the stillness, and woke Keith, who rushed into the room. Keith found Petra on the floor in shock, muttering incoherent words. He scanned the chaotic scene, desperate for answers. "Where's Amy?" he asked. Petra, wide-eyed with terror, couldn't answer immediately. He gripped her shoulders, trying to calm her, but the fear in her eyes told him everything. She pointed to the window, her words stumbling out. A light, an object in the sky. It took Amy. Driven by urgency, Keith ran outside, calling Amy's name, scouring the property in desperation. Finding no trace of her, he returned indoors, his mind racing with questions. Petra, still in shock, could barely control her trembling hands as she tried to describe what she'd seen. Without delay, Keith called the police. Around 11:40 p.m., he reported Amy's disappearance as a possible kidnapping. His voice wavered between fear and disbelief. How could he explain the surreal event? The Tarum Police Department, responsible for the region, sent an investigation team to the site. Among them was Officer Robert Marachnia, known for his skepticism but openness to unusual cases. Finding Keith and Petra visibly shaken, he examined the makeshift house, the shattered window, the scattered objects, and a charred bush outside, a scene defying logical explanation. As officers examined the scene, an unexpected call came. The house phone rang at around 3:00 a.m. A woman's voice brought shocking news. A disoriented young woman had been found at a gas station in Mackay, over 46 miles, 750 kilometers away. She identified herself as Amy Rylance. Relief and dread mingled. How could Amy have traveled that distance in hours? Keith and Petra scarcely believed it. They rushed to Mackay with police, the journey long and fraught with questions. How did Amy get there so quickly? What explanation could there be? At the hospital in Mackay, Amy was regaining consciousness. She lay on a hospital bed surrounded by nurses and doctors. When questioned by local police, her account sounded like a nightmare. She remembered falling asleep on the couch and waking in a strange rectangular room lit by an eerie glow that seemed to come from the walls and floor. No windows or doors were visible. Alone, she panicked, calling for help. A calm, male voice echoed, urging her to stay calm and promising no harm. She felt an eerie recollection, trusting the words despite the terror. A wall slid open, revealing a tall figure in a full-body suit with a black mask covering its face, leaving only eyes, nose, and mouth visible. The figure repeated the assurance before Amy drifted back to sleep. When she awoke again, she was outdoors, the air salty with the smell of the sea and dawn breaking. She stumbled to a gas station, disoriented and wearing torn clothes. Workers called the police, who took her to the hospital. Reuniting with Keith and Petra, Amy appeared physically unharmed, but subtly changed. Her once blonde hair had dark roots, as if weeks had passed, and her body hair was grown out. Doctors also noted small triangular marks on her inner thigh and heels. Unexplained, precision-made marks. Seeking answers, Keith and Petra contacted Diane Harrison, a ufology researcher. She brought Bill Chalker, an abduction expert. They inspected the Gandaya property, the shattered window, the charred bush, and the family's nervous dog, which now jumped at the broken window. However, Keith later decided to go public with the story, fearing media distortion. Diane warned him of potential risks, but he proceeded. Soon after, Diane and Bill lost contact with the trio. They'd vanished from their hotel, fleeing under mysterious circumstances. Keith later called terrified, claiming shadowy men in black had pressured them to alter their story. The family disappeared completely. The case remains unsolved. Some dismiss it as a hoax, but others believe Amy was abducted, and a cover-up is ongoing. The mystery endures, with theories ranging from government experiments to alien encounters. Amy's disappearance and reappearance remain a haunting enigma in modern ufology, a story where questions far outweigh answers, and the line between reality and fiction blurs into the unknown.